According to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service's website, last updated in 2017, there are only 8 known populations of the California fairy shrimp left in all of California. Vernal pools are being degraded by human actions such as urban development, agricultural expansion, and the acceleration of climate change. If vernal pools are eradicated, then the ecosystem will be thrown out of balance, affecting our food supply and quickening the degradation of the rest of the ecosystem. I first learned about vernal pools in high school when I went to the Sacramento Splash Educational Center in Mather Fields, and I actually have a picture. So this is me and a classmate. You can see the vernal pools behind us. We're out in Sacramento and Glenn County, and we were doing invasive species removal. So we're holding star thistle, which was the invasive species that we were removing. And while we were there, we learned that of the total acreage of vernal pools in Placer County between the years of 94 to 97, about 7.2% of the total acreage of land for the vernal pools was unfortunately lost. So why are vernal pools so important? They are home to multiple endemic species. Endemic species are organisms that can only live in that specific region. So the California fairy shrimp is endemic to the California vernal pools. In the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's website, they state that vernal pools are a unique habitat in that they are a seasonal wetland, and this means that they have a wet-dry cycle. So during the fall and summer months, it is a big old grassland, and during winter and spring, when it rains, the water pools up in the grasslands and creates the vernal pools, which is where the California fairy shrimp lives, and this is why it's endemic to the vernal pools. The California fairy shrimp can only exist in this wet-dry cycle because in its adult form, it lives in the vernal pools and lays its eggs in the mud. And as the mud dries out, the adults all die and the eggs lay dormant under the surface of the dirt. When the next wet season comes, the eggs hatch and new adults are born. In addition, in the academic Journal of Hydrology, the article Climate Change Impacts on Vernal Pool Hydrology and Vegetation in Northern California by the authors Montrone, Saito, Weisberg, Ghosh-Johan, Merriam, and Mejia, published in 2019, discusses another endemic species, which is the tall willow herb. It is a type of annual grass that follows the same life cycle as the California fairy shrimp. It grows during the wet season, drops its seeds, and they get buried in the dirt during the dry season, and when the next wet season comes, they sprout again. So now that we understand some of the value of the vernal pools, let's explore some of the challenges that vernal pools are facing right now. The interaction between humanity and nature has rarely been a positive one. This means that agricultural expansion and urban development takes up land that originally belonged to nature and turns it into something that's not so nature-friendly. In the academic journal Aquatic Botany, with the title of Influences of Annual Weather Variability on Vernal Pool Plant Abundance and Community Composition by the authors Javerdick and Collins, published in 2016, they discuss the native plant species that prefer heavier winter rains as opposed to the non-native species that prefer lighter winter rains. And with climate change, as humans accelerate climate change, it makes the overall weather warmer, leading to less winter rains, which means that invasive species will take over the vernal pools and choke out a lot of the native species. So, for example, I actually have an invasive species right here. This is a thistle plant. This is the seed end. You can see it's about 5.5 feet tall. And this is the stalk. I did not get the roots. I actually cut it from one of the fields in the park by my house in the middle of Roseville. So it's a very local species, and it's invasive species like these that will choke out the endemic willow herb annual grasses and cause problems for endemic species like the California fairy shrimp. So now that we know some of the problems that come from human interactions, let's see what some of the good things humans are doing. So there are governmental organizations that help regulate and conserve protected species like the California fairy shrimp and the tall willow herb. And one of those organizations is the United States Fish and Wildlife Services. They monitor and restrict who, where, and when people can build onto new land. So in the academic journal Land Economics, in the article Conserving Endangered Species Through the Regulation of Urban Development, the Case of California Vernal Pools, by authors Sunding and Terhorst, published in 2014, the authors discussed how to lower costs of conservation for urban development, and they suggested that instead of expanding outwards and paying higher amounts of money for the expensive protected lands on the outskirts of the city, that the city should instead make it more dense and build upwards and on the land that they already own instead of spreading out more, so that it would lower the cost of conserving these protected species. In addition, the Vitt and Caldwell are very clear about what happens when these habitats get removed. When a habitat is removed, all of the native species disappear. Invasive species take over, and the native species tend to go extinct in that area. And if they're endemic, like the California fairy shrimp is, they go extinct in the entire world. So you can understand why the government created the California Endangered Species Act, which protects species like the California fairy shrimp and the tall willow herb. So now that we know that vernal pools are a very specific habitat that are home to endangered endemic species that are threatened by human interactions with nature, we can understand why their limited inhabitants is protected and conserved by the government. The natural history in the world is very strong, and the next time you're looking out at a big empty field of grass, think about what would happen the next time it rained and what kind of plants will come to life and what kind of plants live there. Thank you.